Welcome to the Sheff United Way. My name's Hal. Players in. January, a time for making new signings and for transforming your squad. Sometimes you transform it just a little bit, one or two signings here and there. Sometimes it's big additions. I can remember, Ollie, some historical seasons where Sheffield United did do some major surgery in January. I'm sure you can as well. If I go quite a bit further back, when 𝗍𝗵𝗲𝗵 left and 𝗬𝗿𝗃𝗫𝗍 Kendall came in. Now, at that time, you didn't have the transfer window closing when it did. You could still make signings further on. But 𝗬𝗃𝗃𝗫𝗍 really restructured a side that was only going one way and ended up trying to get the side pushing for the playoffs. It would actually take the following season until that happened. But it proved that with just a few key additions, once you get rid of the dead wood, it can be done. So we've done another video about the outs. Ollie, take it away. Give me your first in.
So I think this one's an interesting one, and I think it's all about what are the key areas. I think that's why we needed to approach this one, isn't it? What are the key areas where we need to think about what United need to improve on? I think there's one that shouts out more than any other. I think it's one that Wilder himself has been talking about loads. Obviously, as we record this, we've just signed somebody into that position. Maybe it is that long-term we don't intend to bring anybody else in. I'd be really shocked if that's the case. So I've been looking at strikers, thinking about what we need, what kind of profile. Very clearly, we have a lot who are similar. We have players who want to run in behind, who are trying to focus on movement in the box, who want to stretch defenders. We don't have many battering rams. We don't have, for want of a better phrase, we don't have 𝗍𝗵𝗴. We don't have 𝗬𝗿𝗻𝐷 𝗐𝗐. They're two players who aren't available this January. If they were, maybe they'd be on our lists, but they're not. So I've looked at somebody who might be a similar profile. And the one who stands out to me is a player down in League One, 𝗍𝗏𝗄𝐶. He was playing at Cardiff. He's still at Cardiff. He joined them last January. He had a fantastic end to the season. To say they got relegated, he got 8 goals in 20 games. When you look at his wider profile, he wins the majority of his aerial duels. He's a big man up front. Defensive contributions, he scores really, really highly in the top sort of 5% of all strikers that are currently playing in League One. Shot attempts, he's always involved both ends of the pitch. He's somebody who stands out to me as a really fantastic option. I'd love to see United try to go out there, bring him into the club, because he's exactly what we are missing at the moment. So for me, striker, key area we've got to solve as soon as possible. This man feels like the perfect foil for somebody like Danny Ings, somebody like Tyrese Campbell, big man up front. 𝗬𝗏 for me. Where are you at, Hal? I saw you shaking your head numerous times.
I hate you, Ollie. I hate you so much. I hate you with every fibre of my being. This always the risk when we go, no, don't tell me your players before. My striker is a Danish striker from Cardiff City called 𝗍𝗏𝗄𝐶, of which I've done quite a lot of research, and you've just said it all. Well, you know what, in a way, maybe that's a good thing. We're in agreement. Sheffield United scouting department, just relax, take a step back. We've got you covered. We both agree that that would be the perfect foil for what we currently have as our striking department up front. The players that we know will keep. We're not going to sell Tyrese Campbell. Now, of course, every player has a selling price. Every player, you could say, if the right offer came in, would be available. But I think we're realistically saying that Tyrese Campbell partnering someone else is probably the way to go. We've got Danny Ings as well. We've got Patrick Bamford. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we picked the same one, but 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝐶 would be the striker I'd want. Hey, look, there might be other players that we will agree on. So what I'll do is get ahead of you this time and say that I'm going to jump to the complete other end of the pitch. We've seen that Adam Davies is very much a backup keeper. Doesn't fill me with confidence. I'm sure there's many other blades that would not want to see him as number one. I actually think it's very, very difficult. Wilder said this as well, to get thrown into a game midway through in any position, but possibly the hardest is for a goalkeeper. You need to get into that rhythm, and having not played competitive first team senior minutes for so long, difficult when you've got a crowded box and a corner's coming in, to come out and clear, to come out and say mine, and for everyone to listen and respect, because it takes a little time for you to get that understanding with a defence you've never played a competitive game with before. So I'm going to give Adam Davies a little bit there when we talk about that one game where he came in for Cooper, but I would like to see a more commanding presence and a better quality. And I do think when we look at the free transfers that are currently available, not on the young side, but for a top backup, Fraser Forster, you probably wouldn't be able to get any better than that. And then, Faxon could probably go out on loan. Ollie, goalkeepers.
Really like that shout. Really like the idea of Fraser Forster. I think it was only last season that he's played kind of 7-8 games for Tottenham in the Premier League. He was playing semi-regularly when they had an injury to 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 before they went out and signed another goalkeeper in January. So we're talking about somebody who, yes, is a free agent right now, but is a fantastic option and has been a fantastic option at a much higher level than we're currently playing at. So certainly a really good shout, Hal. I went a different route for this. I looked at goalkeepers who have recently moved to the Premier League to be sort of third, fourth choice keepers, who in 24-25 were first choice keepers at a lower level. So, for example, a couple of names who jumped out to me a little bit off the back of that. Alex Cairns, who had previously been the number one at Salford, had a really good season for Salford, earned himself a move to Leeds. He's currently sat as fourth choice at Leeds. He's obviously comfortable being somebody who doesn't get regular game time. He's moved local to Sheffield, so maybe an option there for him to come in a short-term deal and then reevaluate in the summer where we want to go. The other player who jumped out to me for that was 𝗟𝗟𝗍𝗏, first choice at St Mirren last season, had again a pretty decent season, was picked out in the data and the stats by Brentford, who wanted to bring in somebody who's a solid backup option. He's found himself third, fourth choice. Are there opportunities there for United to do short-term deals to bring somebody in? Potentially. So that's where I was looking at. They were the two names who kind of jumped out to me as they're never, ever going to play a game in the Premier League for their current clubs. They're obviously comfortable being a number two. They'd be comfortable coming in as a number two to somebody. They've got more opportunities potentially at Sheffield United than they have at their current clubs. So would they be interested in that kind of deal? That's where I went with this. I agree. I think we need a new number two. I've never been more scared than when I thought about the idea that Michael Cooper might be injured and that we may have had to start Adam Davies against QPR. And that's nothing against Davies. He just had a really difficult time of it against Coventry. And I think for his confidence, it's probably not ideal for him to continue being the number two at Sheffield United. So I think there's options there. I really like your shout of Forster. I think looking at the free agents is sensible. But if we were going to go a slightly different route, I think you could do a lot worse than Cairns or Balcombe.
Yeah, like those, absolutely. We're sort of already just constantly agreeing with each other, which is dull. So let's stop doing that. I'll say, if we look at defence, let's not go right back just yet, because I think both of us agree when we were talking before about not just players, but player profiles and the key areas. I think most Blades fans would probably agree we need another right back, but we also need another centre back, you could argue. I know we've got a lot of centre backs, but no one has, for me, stepped forward and said, I'm the main man. So have you got a centre back name for me?
I have, and obviously, this one's a no-brainer for me, but there's key questions. Is he fit? Will he be available? They're the two key questions. If both of those answers are yes, then Harry Souttar's a no-brainer. We saw how effective he could be, what an impact he had at Bramall Lane last season. You could argue that his injury on Boxing Day 12 months ago, you can almost draw a direct line from that to where we are today, because without that injury, we get promoted last season. I have no doubt in my mind, because we were an elite defensive unit at that time, and we dropped off significantly after his injury. So there are questions about fitness. There are questions about whether or not he'll be able to repeat that level. But for me, if we were looking at a name, and I'm sure he's the name that's on every Sheffield United fan's lips when you think about centre-back reinforcements, I think it'd be a no-brainer not to go back in and look at Harry Souttar if there is any chance that he's available. Hal, have you looked beyond just the players that we've played for us previously?
Absolutely not. I completely agree. Harry Souttar, if he could get back to fitness, and with that in mind, he's a centre midfielder. He can play right back. I'm sure we'd both agree we'd welcome back 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗬𝗏𝗏, Ollie.
Absolutely would welcome back 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗬𝗏𝗏. And he was another one who, he's not getting loads of game time. He's not currently performing at Leicester. We saw how effective he could be for United last season. And I think that's the really key bit for me, because we talked about some other names. And, me and Hal didn't swap names of who we wanted to say in this video. We didn't go through it together. But as part of wider conversations, names come up. People like Josh Nerfville was one who had been thrown around. We've seen him on Twitter as well, where some fans have said, let's go out and get somebody like that. For me, that's the profile we've got in 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Yes, don't get me wrong. There are players out there who will contribute more goals, more assists, playing that attacking wing-back role that 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 tries to play. But we have got a player who is suitable. Let's not, again, I said this in a previous video, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's focus on areas where we don't currently have the right profile. What we don't have is a defence-first, solid right-back who can stand up to the best wingers in this division. And that's where we've been caught out so many times. Tanganga shifting out of position has just got caught whenever there's been a really good winger up against him. He's looked like a centre-back playing out of position who's not certain where he needs to be. We saw against Ipswich, exactly the same thing happened to Ben Godfrey. A centre-back shifted out to right-back, doesn't know his full positional commitments, gets absolutely done time and again. So if we wanted somebody who is a right-back, who we know is steady, we know knows his position, and we know is going to be defence first, but also really good. 𝗲𝗲𝗲 just makes so much sense to me. And we also saw last season that he can interchange with 𝗍𝗫𝗍. In games where we want to be on the attack, we want to get on the front foot and attack at teams, and 𝗍𝗫𝗍 can do that role. We've seen it already against QPR. I thought he had a really good game, driving United forward and showing attacking intent. What we need is somebody who can defend and hold the line. 𝗲𝗲𝗲 seems like the perfect person to me to be able to fulfill that role as a slightly different profile to what we've got right now.
𝗲𝗲𝗲 was fantastic in the playoff final as well. You're right, more defensively. If we're gonna say, look, the formation is this, it makes it a lot easier. If we're gonna go back four, then I don't think Femi 𝗍𝗫𝗍 is the man. I don't think that Josh 𝗧𝗏𝗏, who you mentioned, is the man.
No.
But if we're gonna go three at the back and play wing backs, I actually think Josh 𝗧𝗏𝗏, I only mentioned him because you've said him, like 6 foot for a wing back. That's fantastic. Already got 3 goals for Bradford City in 10. You can play as a winger as well, so you've got options there if you want to change things up. I actually think he's probably got a higher ceiling than 𝗍𝗫𝗍. But how good would it be to have 2 players like that can do the attacking side of things? But if we know we're going to play a back 4, then I think Chowdhury would be a far better player for that position, because defensively he doesn't let you down. And yeah, you've got Tanganga who can play. You've got Jamie Shackleton who, at a push, I mean, we don't really know what's happening with him, but he can play there. And it depends on the outs.
You've obviously also forgot how we've got Alex Matos who can play there. So actually, we don't need right backs. We're sorted.
Yeah, Matos has covered himself in absolute glory when playing there. Okay, so I think we would probably be very happy. I think a lot of Blades fans would with 𝗲𝗲𝗲 Chowdhury. It would really be up to 𝗲𝗲𝗲 because he is a player that has played in the Premier League, and I'm sure if he was asked, he would rather be heading to a team that's more likely to be there next season. The area that is probably the easiest to think of players is midfield, and straight away, as soon as you said to me central midfielder, Cameron Brannigan from Oxford is the first name that I've been saying for a little while. I think that Wilder likes him. I think there's players that are like the archetypal Sheffield United player that don't yet play for Sheffield United. Like, I don't feel like Alex Matos is a archetypal Sheffield United player, but I do feel like Brannigan fits that mould. Are you in agreement that he would be a player that would be a welcome addition at Bramall Lane?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, he's a fantastic footballer who's also proved himself over a couple of seasons now in the Championship. He was a standout player in League One when Oxford got promoted. He was probably one of the stars of that League One season. He's now stepping up to the Championship and has proved himself more than ready to be an operator at this level. The question for me is how much money it would cost to get him out of Oxford. Obviously, they have made him captain. They've got a lot of hopes that are pinned on his shoulders. And I would also question quite how he fits in this United system. I feel as though the role he'd be playing would probably be that of Blaster, would probably be that of the other players that we've got who we already look at and go, yes, they're the ones who we're going to pin our future on, rather than the areas that we maybe need to be looking at strengthening in that more defensive role. So I do question quite how he'd fit the system, but if he's available, it's a no-brainer that you have to go out and put as much as you can into trying to get Cameron Brannigan, because he's just a fantastic footballer who makes us better. And right now, we need fantastic footballers who make us better. I went a different way on central midfield, because I was trying to think about what it is we need, and I was thinking about that sort of profile. I think we have a lot of positives and potential with the midfield that we've currently got available. I think it's been really poor this season. I'm not changing my mind on that, but I think there's potential there. I think if we started to see a midfield of Soumaré and Arblaster, or Soumaré and Davis, I think we would start to see a lot better in terms of improvement in performance. I think we'd start to have a lot more confidence in what we've got in the centre of the park. It's not an ideal situation because they're not ideal players. They're not the finished article. They're not exactly ready to drive you right to the top of this division. But I think Soumaré, if you look at his stats, has actually shown himself to be a really solid defensive operator. He leads not the entire division, but he leads a significant portion of the division in ball recoveries. He's often the first man to get back in, to win the ball back, to get United back on the front foot. He's very rarely dribbled past. He's got one of the best dribble percentage ratings in terms of how many people actually get past him with a successful dribble. So he has a lot of really outstanding, data points. That's a word. He has outstanding data points.
He's got those outstanding data points on. It's what people are talking about. Points. You can't move in the pubs around me for people talking about the outstanding data points.
Everybody loves a focus around good data points.
I do.
But next to him, obviously, I think next to him as well, Blaster, Davis, they can bring a dynamism that we have missed and that will hopefully make us better. But that to me does gloss over the fact that we're missing a physical profile. Because as much as I like 𝗤, he's not physical, he's not big, he's not the kind of player who 𝗣𝗍𝗲 was, where actually you felt so much confidence that he was never going to be overpowered or that he was going to get sort of run through as they were trying to get towards United's goal. And so I was thinking about the best way to try and fill this gap. I prefer is to go for permanent signings, but I think this is probably a space where potentially it is a Premier League loan. You know, we've spent money already on central midfield in Alex Matos, in 𝗤𝗍𝗲 𝗕. These are players who haven't stepped up to the level, who we've obviously not got the confidence in taking us forward. And so some might think it's a risk to go down a similar route, young player who you want to step in and prove themselves. But there's a player at West Ham, Mohamedou Kante, who is an unbelievable physical specimen, has proved himself in Ligue 2 last season, where he looked like a fantastic footballer at Paris FC. He's another one off the Paris sort of building blocks that seems to just continually bring through really strong, unbelievably talented defensive midfielders. He's a screening CDM who's got the physical profile to cover your fullbacks if they're going to run forward, as well as dropping in to sit with your centre-backs if he needs to. He's also got a turn of pace and a little bit of skill, so can beat his man to try and get United out of defensive situations and onto the front foot. I think there's a lot to really like there. He feels like a player who is perfectly waiting for his breakout season. I would expect to see him end up in the Championship in January, because I think that's what he needs for his next stage of development. I would love for us to be that club, because I think there's a huge upside to what he could bring to the team if we're wanting to go a little bit further on what we've already got. So that's where I went with this one. I think it's a perfect spot for a Premier League loan for somebody who's ready for a breakout, albeit that I understand a lot of people would rather us go into that permanent transfer, somebody who's not just a short-term fix, but it's a long-term solution.
Well, long-term may be harder to find in January. Often January is the short-term, so I think that's a really good shout. I mean, Sam Morsey available on a free.
I like him.
Yeah, a player we've been linked with before. Maybe Ruben Colwill, if we went more attacking. Another player from Cardiff City, if we can stretch to that. I just don't know. And a player that I like is 𝗣𝗍𝗲 𝗕, who is another attacking midfielder and has been absolutely instrumental in League One this season. 13 appearances, 7 goals, and a player at Barnsley. The Barnsley fans love him. He's right-footed. He can also play on the left. He can also play as a second striker. And, you know, God forbid we sell Gustavo Harmer, Callum O'Hare gets injured. You might well need a player that can do that second striker role. And I don't believe he'd cost the earth. And he would be what you said about more of a long-term, because he's a younger player, solution. So just throwing some names out there. Ollie, I will let you have the final words on our players in, because I think we've covered quite a bit of ground there.
We have. The last one for me, though, is I see a real gap in United's team with the current formation. And I think this is probably the most exciting name I'm going to mention at all today. He's a loan who I think would make us not just better than we are now, but would actually make our attacking output probably towards the top end of the division in terms of what he can bring. I think he's that good in terms of where he goes. 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗃. This time last season was at Millwall and was tearing up the Championship. He was contributing goals and assists in a team who aren't famed for having fantastic sort of open play statistics. He was a player who can create himself, who can beat his man, who can score goals, who gets open play balls into the blocks repeatedly that they were able to create chances and score from. He's great one-on-one to beat his man. I think everything about him almost gives an outstanding profile that is exactly what Sheffield United have been missing. When we brought in 𝗤𝗏𝗍, I thought we were getting a winger who could meet his fullback one-on-one and could beat him down the outside, consistently getting past his man, gaining yards for United and actually getting balls into the box so that we are causing problems for the opposition. He's not been able to do that. None of our wingers, if we're being honest with ourselves, have consistently been able to do that. If we're not going to be reliant on 𝗬𝗏𝗍 as our flagship loan sign-in to try and contribute attacking numbers, we'll need to replace him with somebody. I think that somebody should be 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝗃, because I think if he comes in, he would immediately come in as one of the stars of the Championship, who would not just make us better than a relegation battle, but would make us a really terrifying prospect to try and play against, because his one-on-one ability is that good. I'd love to have him in the red and white shirt. He will be available for loan from Crystal Palace in January. I have no doubt about that, because he's made no appearances for their first team. It feels like a no-brainer. If he's available, you break the bank to go and try and bring him in if you can.
Yeah, I mean, they spent a lot of money on him, 12 million, I think it was. He's only 20 years old, and he did really, really well. Millwall fans adored him. And it could be a kind of live wire that the Blades need, because we have had moments in matches where we can't break down oppositions that that think we're actually a team that really do lack creativity, and we've, to be honest, looked like that. I think that's a really wonderful suggestion. I think a lot of these suggestions are very exciting. We'll actually have to wait and see what the Blades hierarchy allow with the purse strings, what Chris Wilder can get his hands on, and the players that we can get out, as I mentioned at the start, to allow us to bring players in. There's one thing you've got to consider with all of this, and we want your thoughts. We want your thoughts in the comments, is we are realistically not going to go up this season. We are going to run out of parachute payments, and we're going to have to, in the summer, raise 40 million to just pluck a figure out of thin air, but it's probably accurate. When do you start? When do you start to try and raise that money? Because it's looking impossible. We can't even get out of the bottom half. Never mind the relegation zone. So forget about playoffs. When do you start? Yeah. Do you start now? Do you look to sell some of the more valuable assets? And in one sense, that maybe gives you some money to go out and make signings. In another, it maybe keeps the wolf from the door come the summer. And we'll have to wait and see in which direction they go. Sell to buy or sell to survive. Ollie, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because obviously it does feel as though I described this season at the start of the year as our last chance. You know, you're coming down, parachute payments. We know that Sheffield United historically over the last few seasons have had money issues. We thought the new owners were going to come in and resolve that. We were expecting a bit more from them in terms of funding, in terms of being able to push the club forward. I think if we've seen anything over the last few months, it's that they're not in that position. They're not going to be cash rich. They're not going to be somebody who can afford to just continually fund the losses that happen with a Championship football club. And so that rebuild point is really interesting. I think it does potentially throw a little bit of cold water over the idea of these elite Premier League loans coming down, which do cost significant funds. But we have to safeguard the future of Sheffield United. And if we're not going to get promoted, which we're not, we all know that's the case, we need to keep ourselves in the Championship and keep ourselves at a financially stable position. And the only way to do that is through selling the assets that we've got.
You only need to look across the road. You're absolutely right to see how it can all go wrong with poor ownership. And I'm not saying we've got poor ownership. I'm just saying show me by your actions. Ollie, you show me by your actions that you've done your research, as you always do. You absolute superstar. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us, whether you've been watching or listening on our free channel and audio podcast. Until next time, thanks very much.